And today's gratuitous food shot is gyukatsu! Hey guys, thank you once again for dropping by. Today I'm going to make another one of these little unplanned, unscripted, talking directly to the camera kind of videos. I made a few kind of out and about travel vlogs recently and they take a lot longer to edit than I thought they did. So I wanted to do one of these kinds of videos where, I talk for a longer period of time before each edit. There's not as much need to make cuts, except for, when there are long pauses or I want to edit out something stupid that I've said. Today I want to talk about Typhoon Faxai, or Taihu Dai Jugoban, I think it was. That just means typhoon number 15, In Japan they don't feel the need to give a cute name to a devastating storm. I guess I could intersperse everything I'm saying with a bunch of dramatic looking news footage like this. But there are plenty of places you can go to see that kind of imagery. And as for footage that I myself took, well, that's limited to just this. I didn't particularly want to go out in the typhoon with a camera. So instead I'm just going to talk, and as is my wont with this kind of video, I'm going to put some walkabout footage around here. It has nothing to do with typhoons, but it gives you something to look at. So yeah, as I mentioned in my video about safety in Japan, while you are extremely safe from violent crime in Japan, statistically speaking, the kind of trade-off, and it's a very good trade-off, is that there are a lot more natural disasters here than there are in my home country of England. Japan is in the so-called Ring of Fire, it's susceptible to earthquakes, to typhoons, to tsunami, and there's large active volcanoes that could erupt and really disrupt life here. We're constantly being told we're overdue for some kind of large-scale disaster. Mount Fuji is often predicted to erupt within the next 10 or 15 years. Kanto, the area where Tokyo is supposed to experience another huge earthquake. Faxai was considered a Category 3 tropical storm, but a Category 5 one hit Osaka last year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. And the scenes from that were pretty scary too. Let me cut in a couple of them now. Scary, right? So I guess there's a kind of low-level existential dread that permeates your existence when you're in Japan, which I don't have to deal with when I'm in the UK. Now, I'm sure me being killed in a large-scale earthquake is vastly less likely than me dying in a car accident or contracting a deadly disease, but that doesn't mean the possibility isn't constantly there in the back of my mind. Especially living in an old house, something that I generally really love. I have to be mindful of the possibility of, some natural disaster causing extensive damage to the house and the inconvenience and expense that would incur even with insurance. And generally speaking, that's just not something I would have to deal with in England, partly because it's a really stable place to live. I think I felt one tiny earthquake in my entire life living there, and the biggest weather event that happened was the storm in 1987. Yes, I do remember that, I'm many centuries old, and the winds during Faxai were substantially faster and potentially more damaging. Plus, of course, because it's not an earthquake-prone place, the houses in England tend to be made much more solidly of stone and last a very long time. Through a combination of the prevalence of earthquakes, the traditional desire to have air flowing through a house, and just traditional carpentry techniques, Japanese houses tend to be made of wood and not designed to last hundreds of years. I'm not sure the term safe as houses would make a whole lot of sense here. Now, is being in such a tectonically active and cyclone-prone part of the world going to put you off living here? Put one off living here, I should say, kind of hypothetically. Well, I don't think it should. There are plenty of other very desirable places, including in the United States, where natural disasters can and will occur. And yes, of course, it's a trade-off. There are many other advantages to living in Japan that I really enjoy, that make that background risk well worth it. Now, in the case of Faxai, I think it took quite a lot of people by surprise. You know, when the typhoon warnings were issued, a lot of people were very dismissive. There were a lot of people saying everyone's just going to sleep through it, the Japanese always make a lot of fuss over nothing, all the other typhoons they've been through have just been a little bit of wind and rain. And while afterwards there were, of course, a few people on social media who were very proud of telling everybody they slept right through it, most of the reaction was surprise with a bit of horror. You know, they were woken up, they were disturbed by the rattling, their children were crying, the family was going to huddle together to try and get through the night. And yeah, as it turned out, it was not a meme, it was not just a joke that could be offhandedly poo-pooed. There was quite widespread devastation, a practice golf range with those huge long poles collapsed onto some houses, and yeah, separately a woman of, I think, 50 years old was tragically killed. And yeah, I guess what made me want to make this video was the fact that people were very tone deaf afterwards. You know, when a typhoon does turn out to be very anticlimactic, when nothing much happens except, you know, a bit of wind and rain hits your windows, then yeah, sure, I understand people posting one leaf or a single plastic deck chair that's fallen over and saying, "We will rebuild." It's kind of funny. But when somebody has died and when a lot of people have, you know, lost their homes or have to spend a lot of time and money making their home livable again, I think that's a bit tone deaf. It really surprised me how many people would look at pictures of, you know, fallen trees and destroyed buildings. I saw one person post that his neighbour's roof had blown into his garden and was currently touching the electric wires overhead, so he needed to get the fire department in to help. So I guess I just didn't get why people would still look at those kinds of images and pretend like it was no big deal. Now, I'll readily admit that I was one of the people who was pretty underwhelmed when I saw the initial reports. I thought it would fizzle out, I thought we wouldn't get much more than a bit of heavy rain. But after a sleepless night, very worried about the integrity of my home, you know, that opinion really changed. And yes, I live in an old wooden house, so perhaps it's a little more vulnerable than modern high-rises or newly built family homes with all the latest safety features, but I can't really believe that anybody in the same area I was in didn't have a sleepless night and, well, at the very least an experience that would make you not want to post the meme you'd been saving of the deck chair having fallen over. Here in Edogaoku, my house was basically rocking like it was a low-level earthquake for an hour or more. My trees were slightly uprooted and I had to straighten them out. My pond had overflowed just a little, luckily not enough that any fish could have got out. The little lid where I have my compost had been blown off and flew across the garden, and in the local area, you know, there was very noticeable damage. A lot of the nice sakura trees had lost a lot of branches, and yeah, absolutely, there were pieces of roofing and fences that were strewn about all over the road when I walked to the station. Hundreds of people were also very much delayed by transportation problems in the wake of the storm, and yeah, I know it was absolute chaos in Narita Airport. So yeah, I guess the most productive way to end a video like this would be to talk about, you know, preparedness and what to do when a typhoon is announced. So if, like me, your home has storm shutters on the windows and doors, then I would recommend you close those. I definitely was worried that some of my windows that don't have them were going to get blown in, and at least one of my insect nets was completely shredded by the wind. I have to say though, it was the vibration of the shutters that was the most noisy thing that prevented me from sleeping during the night. It made my whole house sound like a huge baby rattle. Obviously take indoors anything that you might think could be blown away or lost, like laundry poles, ornaments, balcony slippers, that's the one I forgot. And yeah, most critically, be prepared to evacuate if need be. It's recommended in the case of earthquakes anyway, but it's a good idea to have a pack that you can just grab and go with in case you need to evacuate. Good things to have inside would include a flashlight or torch with extra batteries, some tinned food, a bottle of water, maybe even a map, preferably that indicates where the evacuation zone is in your local area. If you don't know that information, it will be available at the City Hall or online. As the timing of this typhoon should remind us, this kind of thing can happen in the middle of the night, and you might not have as much time to prepare as you imagine you do. And I have to say, in terms of preparedness, there's always the possibility that plays in the little paranoid movie theatre of my mind that during the big typhoon, a big earthquake could also happen. Or Fuji could erupt. All three together, why not? Probably there's not a whole lot of preparation that could be done in that kind of scenario, and it's incredibly unlikely, of course. But, you know, it bears thinking about, I guess. On that cheery note, I guess I should end the video and head to work. Yeah, let's all do our very best to stay safe and be prepared for any eventuality. That's all for today. Let's see how quickly I can throw this edit together, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye! The tropical storm wasn't enough. I guess we've got to have a massive thunderstorm too. Japan! Ooh.